Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on managing uncertainty, our latest health and wellbeing webinar in conjunction with the IMechE. My name is Laura Klein, and I'm the Operations Manager here at Support Network, the personal advice and support charity for IMechE members and their family. I'm shortly going to hand over to Lucille Bleekers, who's the Wellbeing Programme Lead at SuperWellness, who will deliver the content today. We are recording today's webinar, and a recording will be sent to all delegates in a few days at the end. If you are affected by technical issues, you will be able to watch at a later date. But if you do have any issues, please try refreshing your screen. And if that doesn't work, you can use the Ask a Question box to raise this, and one of my colleagues will try and help. The webinar will last approximately 50 minutes today, followed by a Q&A session. And you can ask your questions as we go via the Ask a Question box. All messages are private, and we will try to raise all questions and comments at the end of the session. We would also be really grateful for your feedback at the end of the webinar on how you felt it went and anything else you'd like us to develop as our wellbeing offering. And you can find a link to our feedback form in the resources box. Lucille, over to you.
Great, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to share the slides, everyone. Right, so Laura, you will let me know if there's a problem. So you should all have the main slide on here. So we've all experienced unprecedented changes over the last few years, resulting in a variety of consequences to our mental health. So, for instance, much depended on our living circumstances as to whether we managed well with the various lockdowns that we had, and what kind of impact it had on us. So our individual health issues, our age, our life circumstances, all would have affected how we ended up, feeling about the virus itself, but also how we coped daily. So, indeed, we also saw that those of us who were struggling with mental wellness would have found that the last few years really kind of contributed to your mental stability. But one area that affected us all equally and hasn't vanished since life returned to somewhat relative normality is this feeling of uncertainty. So today we'll be looking a little bit more deeply into the effect that change can have on us and what tools we can use to navigate us through times of uncertainty. So just very briefly, a little bit about me. As Laura said, my name is Lucille Bleekers. I'm a registered nutritional therapist. I am here on behalf of SuperWellness. I've been there involved with SuperWellness as a corporate nutritionist since 2017. I'm their Wellbeing Program Lead and involved in a number of organizations, both face-to-face as well as online, like we are doing today. So what are we going to be talking about today? If there's one thing that we've all learned over the few years is that change is inevitable. It's often not comfortable, and it's particularly uncomfortable when it's out of our control. So change, we know, brings with it this uncertainty, and this has an impact on both our physical and our mental health. So this session is hoping to not only provide you with some tools to manage the uncertainty, but a few brief moments to relax towards the end as well. So we're going to start off with a poll, which I know Laura is going to share for us. So what I'd really like to know is, how does change make you feel? So, just giving some consideration to reflecting on the past or current changes that you've experienced, and think about what words come to mind, and use the poll just to select a few. Obviously, if I haven't listed anything that you particularly feel kind of springs to mind for you, please share it in I think it's called your question box, and then Laura can let me know.
Okay, we'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Okay, Lucille. So, very mixed. So, let me see. So I think people have gone for pretty much everything. So worried 9%, anxious 18%, hesitant 11%, excited 9%, insecure nearly 14%, exhausted 9%, impatient 7%, uncomfortable 14%, and stressed 9%.
All right, so yeah, so here we can kind of list them all up. Thank you, Laura. So we've got them all up there. So that's really interesting. So anxious seemed to be the highest, then uncomfortable, then we got hesitant, but we had a variety, and certainly no one felt relaxed or happy about change. So yeah, so I think that gives us a good idea. And like I said, if there's anything I haven't mentioned, then do please share that. But I think it just really indicates that we're all pretty much feel very similar when it comes to change. So we're not alone in this. So why is change so demanding? So let's consider why change feels so difficult to manage. So when you've got change, whether it's in your private lives or your work lives, it is very difficult, but yet something that we all desire to improve. So some of us might actually, although we're wanting the change because we want to improve, maybe it's your well-being, maybe it's your living or your financial circumstances or your work lives. So you want this change, but actually it's a little bit uncomfortable for us, isn't it? So when we kind of looking at kind of lifestyle changes, if you want to look at that, changing too many things at once can be almost impossible and certainly not recommended. So if, for instance, if you were someone who maybe wanted to lose weight, but you also wanted to kind of start exercising, you haven't really been doing much exercise, so you realize, okay, I need to do more exercise, but also you're a smoker and you want to give up smoking. I would certainly not recommend that you stop smoking, start exercising, and kind of, have a weight loss program all at the same time. I generally, with my clients, I really want them to be successful in their lifestyle changes. So I don't want to set them up to fail. And for the most part, I feel giving someone too many changes all at once, does exactly that. And it's not sustainable. So what we always suggest is to start with one thing at a time. So it might be that you might feel, all right, I'll stop with the smoking first, because that will then give me a little bit more energy. I won't be so out of breath when I try and exercise, and so on and so on. So, I'm sure you've got kind of examples that you might think, but certainly we always encouraging those small wins first. Not that stopping smoking is a small win, it's quite a significant one, but just thinking of gradually incorporating changes and moving on once you've kind of succeeded in one change at a time. We often refer to stages of having stages of change. So James Prochaska and his colleagues in the 1970s developed these six-stage model of behavioral change. So it was based on some research showing that people go through this series of changes, and they were basically saying that you need to go through these changes to have successful behavior change, so more sustainable behavioral change. So I'm not going to go through all these stages, but I'll just briefly mention them. So we've got the pre-contemplation stage, we've got the contemplation stage, the preparation, the action, the maintenance, and then the relapse stage. So just by pre-contemplating, so literally just thinking that something might be a good idea. So for example, keeping with the smoking example, you may be thinking it would be a good idea to give up smoking, and then thinking about all the changes, the stages you've got to go through, you can realize how hard it can be to actually make some changes. And kind of just touching on that final stage, which is the relapse stage. This is normal and it shouldn't be seen as a failure, because with each relapse, we get a greater understanding of what's worked for us and what hasn't worked for us. So you kind of as you go through the next process again, hopefully it is more a stronger attempt and it's more sustainable. So When it comes to making changes as well, generally it does usually involve more than one change. So sticking back with the kind of the weight loss and the diet analogy, if you think that you are wanting to lose weight, and you know that instead of grabbing kind of easy food on the go for lunchtime, that actually you need to prepare healthy meals yourself. It may involve either a nighttime routine of preparing lunch for the next day, or maybe you need to set your alarm 10 or 15 minutes earlier on a morning, so that your morning routine changes to include prepping for lunch. So we all love kind of status quo, that it's comfortable for us in most situations. So as long as our current state provides us with this comfort and security, making a change will be difficult. So, we saw how talking about change and doing something about it, are completely two different things if we link back to Prochaska's stages of change. So I think what we probably need here is we have to see that there's clear benefit to making those changes, because this kind of, helps us aspire to something. It helps us become motivated to convince ourselves to put that effort in to make those changes. So we may not like our current state, but if there's no kind of real desired state to aspire to, then that change becomes redundant. So being unable to really envision what our life might be like after that transformation, dampens down our motivation. So thinking about wanting to give up smoking, thinking that, once you've done that, your lung capacity will be improved, you might be able to exercise more, and kind of just envisioning what that might feel for you might be just what you need to motivate you to kind of move from that pre-contemplation phase. So we also obviously like to be in control of what's happening for us. So if we lose our sense of control, this can contribute to this anxiety and fear. And sometimes change will happen that we don't have any control over. So we'll look at this in a little bit more detail later. But firstly, let's examine some of the changes that we've already had to contend with and how that left us feeling. So kind of using COVID again, when COVID hit, everything changed for us, and it was literally overnight, wasn't it? We really experienced too many changes in a short period of time. So, this may have manifested itself in feelings of confusion or, stress, apathy, burnout, frustration, and even anger. So the amount of change that the average employee can absorb without becoming fatigued in 2020 was thought to be halved in comparison to 2019. So in other words, in 2020, we became less able to kind of to cope with change than we did the year before. And actually 2020 became known as the International Year of Crisis Fatigue. And Gartner, which is a research company, actually noted that the smaller changes created more fatigue for us. So thinking about, as we moved into this more hybrid way of working, so things like, setting ourselves up at home, all of a sudden having to work from home as opposed to in the office, maybe mergers and acquisitions, which is, I think there seem to be a lot of that happening at the moment. So structural restructure changes within organizations. These are supposed to be 2.5 times more fatiguing than kind of the bigger changes. So if we move on to kind of thinking about this hybrid world as well, this part remote, part office schedule that has been hailed as the future of work. And for some, in theory, it should be the perfect setup where, employees get the best of both worlds. So when it at first kind of, was recognized that we're going to be working more in a hybrid way of working, some people, felt that it was the answer to all their prayers. It It gave you a little bit more independence. It gave you some flexibility for home working, yet you still had the kind of the balance of with the structure and sociability of going into the office on certain days as well. But actually, some employees have stated that this hybrid setup has left them feeling more exhausted than they've ever felt before. So a recent study found that 20% of UK workers reported difficulties switching off from work and feeling always on, with struggling to adapt to this hybrid model and kind of the blurred boundaries. So some of us are working, living, eating in our home office. So, you know, setting up those boundaries between home and work, you know, has been thought to be the major contributing factor that's leaving some of us feeling quite exhausted. So in a recent global study by an employee engagement platform called Tiny Pulse, found that 72% of workers reported exhaustion from working hybrid. And the thinking is that this, you know, it could be due to a couple of things. It could be struggling to find that good routine when your schedule is always in and out of the office. So you kind of, you know, as we said, in theory, this should all work really well, but when you're kind of having to pack everything up and take it into the office, and your setup might not be right for you, you know, that could be causing you some stress as well. But it could also be that, you know, when the survey was done, which was 2020, 2021, that your hybrid practices, you know, hadn't really become second nature yet. So initially things like this kind of change does take greater energy. We've got to be a little bit more organized, and we've got to, you know, plan things a little bit better. In addition, really, this hybrid model can contribute to the workplace culture becoming a little bit diluted. So with reduced engagement from the organization's missions and values. So I think, you know, this could go either way. It could be that organizations really work really hard to keep lines of communication open, you know, when you're not in the office, and to kind of, you know, really keep that collaboration open and have a kind of a drip feed of communication that really builds on the organization's missions and values. So it is, you know, it did create an opportunity for you know, organizations to really evaluate the culture and how they wanted that fed through. But then you might have some organizations that just haven't managed to do that, so that there isn't a real strong culture, which can leave you feeling a bit isolated and kind of add to that that uncertainty that we've been talking about. So, you know, why does uncertainty make us feel so uneasy? We know there's been a tremendous amount of uncertainty over the past few years, you know, not only with COVID, but there's a lot going on globally in the world. So we, you know, I think we've been reminded that nothing in this world is certain. So there's been various research done on how uncertainty can affect our behavior. One such researcher from Yale University, Emma Tanovich, so she's a psychologist with the Boston Consulting Group in Philadelphia, and she worked with Yale University on research onto the consequences of uncertainty. And she explained that uncertainty is an uncomfortable feeling that can be intensified, that can intensify how threatening a situation feels. So further to this, you've got another psychologist, Dan Group, who works for the Center for Healthy Minds. And he said that our brains actually evolved to try and create order and predictability. So, you know, your brain is constantly generating models about the future that are based on your past experiences. So in simple words, it means that we are using our past experiences to predict the future. I'm sure this has resonated with many of you. Certainly for me, my responses to how I respond to certain things now is based on my experiences that I had before. So how, what kind of techniques that we can try and use to try and support this uncertainty? Because if you are continuously using past experiences, it's almost like we become quite hypervigilant. We keep thinking, we're going to have that same experience again. This can lead to, high levels of feelings of anxiety and this fear that we've been talking about. So as we were saying, the brain is constantly trying to predict what will happen next. So allowing it to prepare the body and the mind in the most effective way possible. So kind of helping us prepare for anything that can go wrong. So in uncertain situations, that planning is a lot harder. And we deal with it by either avoiding the uncertainty altogether, so distracting ourselves is one way of doing that, or by putting the brain and the body in an aroused state. So that's this hypervigilant state that I was talking about, so that it's ready to respond to any changing situation, that could be contributing to the anxiety we feel. So another thing that we tend to do is we tend to seek reassurance, and I've certainly done that as well. And I'm sure many of you have. You've spoken to your colleagues, you've spoken to friends and families and asked them, well, what do you think about this situation? But that tends to expose us to lots more information and other people's perceptions, other people's kind of anxieties and past experiences. So, this is just going to really contribute to increasing your anxieties even further. So we go back to Dan Greep, the previous psychologist. He suggested that what we need to do is to try and reframe the situation. So, and he shared that actually, staring the problem in the face is one of the more helpful strategies when it comes to uncertainty. So, really taking some time out to notice what exactly you're worried about, and what is the underlying fear that's actually prompting this anxiety. So these thoughts are there and they are real, they're normal, but just remember they are only thoughts and not fact. So we actually had a real life example. We have some technical issues sometimes with sharing slides on here and then being able to kind of maneuver back and forward from sharing the slides. And both Laura and I were feeling quite kind of anxious about it based on past experiences, and Laura said, you're going to tell me to reframe this situation. So, and I suppose that's exactly what I would suggest. And we had some plans in place, so we knew how to deal with it. But also, like I said, to what that would do is you've had these experiences before, so you know what to expect. And each time you go through this experience, you're building up more resilience, and this is kind of helping with our growth mindset as well. So just a little example, but there's no way to ensure certainty. We didn't know for sure exactly how these slides were going to work today, but it's just being able to reframe that uncertainty as a possibility and jump into the possibility of positive outcomes. So an example for that is also when I first started going back face to face and presenting, there was an element of anxiety and fear surrounding that because I hadn't done it for almost 3 years. But actually I reframed this to myself and I said, well, actually, it's a learning experience for me. I can really learn to hone in my presenting skills a little bit more, practice a few things that I've maybe learned from doing on presenting on webinars, presenting online. So I've just really tried to kind of, just turn it all around and have more of a positive frame on it. I'm sure you can think of many examples in your working life, in your personal life, where you've maybe done that. And please do feel free to share in your question box, because it's always nice to learn from others. So what are some of the ways that we can help to navigate change? So I'm just going to have a sip of water. So the first one is just being aware. So it's helpful to be aware of our own signs and triggers, and to really consider where this anxiety is coming from. So thinking about, how your behavior is changing as well. Are you, when you're faced with a lot of change, it could be in the workplace or in your personal lives, how do you respond? How does this affect your behavior? Do you become a little bit withdrawn, or do you isolate yourself? And is this impacting others around you as well? And what are the things that you can do to help keep yourself well while this is all happening, to kind of build that resilience? It may be that you've had experience of this before, and you know that keeping to your daily routine, particularly if you do have a regular exercise routine, so making sure that you're still maintaining that, making sure that you are still eating well and eating healthily. Often when we are feeling, quite exhausted with change and anxiety, those are the things that tend to go by the wayside. We no longer feel like exercising or eating well, and we tend to forget to look after ourselves. And also thinking about maybe what works for you is talking to someone, finding someone that you can talk to and get support from. Is also some of the things that you can do. So once again, please do share in the question box of some tools and tricks that you've found when you've gone through difficult periods that have helped build your resilience when faced with change and uncertainty. The other thing to consider is it may not just be an individual thing. So it may not just be you that's going through the change. It could be a collective issue. So often you are not alone. Thinking once again to those mergers and acquisitions, for example, and then acknowledging what's actually going on. So acknowledging that there's significant changes happening and that it is making you feel a bit uncomfortable. Okay, or maybe a lot uncomfortable, and then trying to not shy away from this and distract ourselves, but actually face the issue head on. And you can think about what it is that you can control in this particular situation and what you can't. So, when you are thinking of what you can control, you're just acknowledging what is going on and, finding kind of a step towards finding those coping strategies that will help you manage your worries. So when you're thinking about what it is that you can control, so let's say it's, you've lost your job, for example, you can control how much energy that you can put in to finding a new job, to networking, sending out your CV, looking through looking through the different platforms to look for a job. So that is something that you can control. And I think this almost gives you, when you start taking a little bit of action, this gives you a sense of peace, and you can almost then kind of, as you work through the challenging time, you can kind of do this in a better space. Another example would be if you had any health concerns. Once again, you can control how you can take action to maybe lower your stress levels, reach out to to a loved one, reach for support. Sometimes it actually is more about taking control of your attitude and your emotional response. So these are just some examples where you can think about what it is that you can face head on to kind of help you through the challenging period. And then, of course, identifying some small actions. So it's building on a little bit to what I've just been saying, really, identifying some things that you can do to keep yourself well. So this might be things you can do for yourself, or it could be specific things you can ask of others, such as, so you may ask for some help on a challenging task. You may ask for an extension on a deadline, or maybe you need some time off for an appointment. So all of these helps you to then take some action. So it's important to remember here that everyone will be having a slightly different experience. You'll all have different habits. You'll all have different vulnerabilities, different worries, and different needs. So we'll all be having a different experience here. So this is an interesting one, thinking about making a plan, but a plan that you will deviate from. So our brains are hardwired to recognize patterns. So this is we like to work in a certain way. We report in a certain way. We have routines in work and routines in our personal lives. And it's familiar. We know what we can do. We kind of can do it almost in our sleep. And it's comfortable for us. So uncertainty actually interferes with this mechanism, and once again, that's where we become kind of hyper aroused or hyper vigilant. When things kind of disrupt our plans, and that's kind of what makes us feel quite exhausted by all of this, and kind of forces this change. So how can we figure out a path forward under these circumstances? So there's an organizational psychologist, Dr. Laura Gallagher, who worked with NASA for many years. And she was saying that actually it's fine to have plans or routines. And actually, in some instances, this is good, but they shouldn't be set in stone. And a more flexible mindset is a healthier approach. And this maybe links back into that reframing your reframing the situation that we mentioned earlier. So by doing this, by being more flexible, by trying to kind of put a more positive stance on the situation, this will help you to feel less frustrated, because inevitably things do shift, and you'll be then more willing to see it as a learning and growth experience. And it really does open us up to more positive opportunities. So we can kind of, we can approach it, life just becomes a bit more richer and more positive for us. So I don't know what everyone feels about that. Once again, please feel free to share in the question box. Does it sound easier than what I've made it out to be? More difficult, I should say. Have I made it sound easier than what it actually is? We can have a chat about that at the end. So you may all be familiar with mindfulness. It really is it can help us to pause in our everyday life, and enables a moment where we can remove ourselves from a situation. So not everyone gets on with mindfulness. Certainly there's certain elements of mindfulness that I kind of struggle with, but it really can be quite empowering. If you're focusing on the kind of the here and now and embracing each moment of the day, you tend to worry less about what might happen or what can happen tomorrow. And there's actually been lots of research found that mindfulness can be really beneficial in the workplace. I think they looked at over about 4,000 scientific papers to show that, how it improves our overall wellness. It helps to reduce stress and tension, and to make better decisions. So, for those of you who might struggle with mindfulness, you maybe want to think about how you can incorporate that in other ways. So things like walking, maybe on your next walk, instead of kind of checking your phone or even listening to music, just, be more conscious of smells, be more conscious of the sounds, with the wind and the leaves rustling in the wind. All of that just takes us out of, what might be bothering us, and kind of just draws us back just into the moment and the here and now. Another one is visualizing. So, thinking about, I suppose we can think a little bit about earlier on when I mentioned, being able to really have a vision of what your life might be when you make, when that change happens, or when you make those changes like stopping smoking or eating more healthily, or doing more exercise. But it can also take you out of what potentially could be a stressful situation and visualize your happy place. So before kind of embarking on visualization, you want to think about, well, what is my happy place? And this is obviously very individual to everyone else, but you have a clear sense when you've found what that is, of what your body feels like, what the sounds are there, and it could be a wooden hut in a forest. It could be a hammock on the beach, where you can really envisage the sound of the seagulls or the waves crashing on the beach, and that is your happy place. So when you're in a difficult situation with in work, whatever that may be, it could be that you've just opened up an email that's really annoyed you, and before you respond, you kind of think, well, actually, I'm going to go into my happy place, or maybe you're struggling to sleep at night. If you start visualizing what your happy place is, that could help you fall asleep. And then breathing, which is one of my really big favorites. It's just about pausing and using our breath as well, just to kind of calm down our nervous system, and bring us back into the present. So I'm going to just do a quick 1 minute reset breathing exercise with you. This is kind of really just a simple technique utilizing mindfulness through breathing. So, we know we all breathe automatically without even noticing. So before we go into this reset exercise, I just want you to take a moment and just to take a notice of your breathing. Are you feeling your abdomen going out? You can even put your hand on your lower abdomen and feel, is it going out as you are breathing out and coming in as you're breathing in? What is it doing? Or is it your chest that's rising? So when we're sitting at our desk, we tend to kind of be typing away on our computers, and we tend to breathe really shallow, which can kind of contribute to those feelings of stress and anxiety. We're not getting that nice deep breath in. So now if you focus on your breathing through your diaphragm, I should say, you should feel your belly going out, and you should feel like you are taking in deeper breaths than you would normally if it was just kind of from your upper body. You'll definitely be getting in more oxygen than the more shallow breathing that I've been talking about. So this is, like I said, a superb technique for when you're in front of your laptop and you've just received an email that has annoyed you, or you've had an unexpected change, and you feel like you have a lot on your plate work-wise, or any moment when you start to just, feel a bit overwhelmed and a bit antsy, and you just kind of need to refocus. Just this reset technique, is perfect for that. So let's practice this together. What I'm going to do is ask you to, to kind of sit comfortably in your chair. Make sure your feet are flat on the floor, so you are grounded to the earth and your back is straight, but don't make it too rigid. Allow your gaze to fall wherever it does in front of you. And actually, if you even feel comfortable enough, you can close your eyes. So you can put your palms on your laps and just take some normal breaths and feel comfortable and relaxed. So like I said, if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes, and then let's just take a minute to consider our breath. So follow the flow of your breath in as you inhale through your nose. And when you next inhale, notice the sensation on the tip of your nose. As you exhale, notice the air is slightly warmer than it was when you inhaled. In the next inhalation, take a deep breath in and fill your lungs up to their full capacity. And then as you exhale, slowly notice the air leaving your nostrils. So let's inhale again deeply, filling your lungs up to full capacity. So being conscious of what's happening with your belly. Is that going out, or is the breath coming in from your shoulders? And as you exhale, you're bringing your awareness to the tip of your nose and just noticing the subtle temperature change as you exhale. So you can keep doing this, repeat this a couple more times, just being aware of the sensations on the tip of your nose and noticing the air when you are inhaling and when you are exhaling. Then let your breath go back to its natural rhythm. And just with that, you should hopefully feel a real shift in your physical and mental well-being. So you can see this is just helping you to create a pause in your mindset that will then enable you to decide which way you want to go from this point forward. If it's that difficult email that we've been talking about, or maybe you've been, struggling with a decision on your next steps. This might also just give you that pause for thought. All right, so I'd love to know how that made you feel, and we will be coming back to another breathing exercise shortly. So looking at kindness, I really love this as a real technique to help shift your mindset. So studies have proven how kindness has a positive effect across the workplace. So initiatives that encourage acts of kindness within the workplace is found to be, really transformative for low mood, not only for the receiver, but also for the giver. So I don't know if you've come across the Random Acts of Kindness campaign, and they have found the following benefits within the workplace, particularly lowered blood pressure and improved overall heart rate, increased energy, greater happiness, and then stimulation of our feel-good neurotransmitter serotonin. So this helps kind of calm you down. It helps with your mood to keep you happy. It also helps with kind of healing your wounds. So kindness can begin or even end with everyday interactions, regardless of, your seniority within an organization. And that kind of brings us to this culture of kindness, because each of us has, can make moment by moment choices about how kind we want to be to those around us. And then hopefully in the fullness of time, it is those everyday choices that then can, influence a culture within a corporate environment. So, we all have a responsibility, not only, really it starts from the top and kind of filters all the way down. So, maybe you can think of something really kind that a colleague did or said for you, and how that made you feel. And then think about playing that forward yourself to the rest of your team members. Or maybe it's even just someone you kind of bump into in the lobby. And then, of course, there's self-compassion, because we tend to be our own harshest critic. Often this is kind of a natural reaction. However, this can be pretty kind of counterproductive, to us being this negative self-talk. Having said that, this, self-analysis does have an important role in self-improvement, but we do need to make room for self-compassion if we want to kind of successfully move beyond, any mistakes and towards future successes. I think this is probably quite difficult to do as well, but the golden rule that treat others as we would like to be treated is something to kind of keep in mind. But what happens if we kind of reverse this? So we kind of turn that around and applied it to ourselves and our own struggles. So if we gave ourselves the consideration and the kindness and the room for improvement that we extend to our co-workers and professional peers, this could go a long way to shifting, not only our own mindset, but the culture within the organization. So using the techniques that we've kind of just spoken about, the mindfulness, whether it's just when we go on our daily walk, some breathing techniques, and then this kindness technique will really help with giving us some kind of techniques to shift our mindset and help us to manage the challenges surrounding uncertainty. So yes, I mean, that's kind of coming towards the end. So we've just got a breathing exercise and a visualization exercise before we end off and we open for questions. So often what happens when we are feeling, like we said earlier, when we are feeling stressed and anxious, we tend to forget to look after ourselves. And one of the ways that we can do that is to think about, the harmful effects of the stress is having on us, and how breathing, just kind of, focusing in on our breathing can actually help with that. It's something free, and it's something we all know how to do. And some people can feel an immediate change when they kind of start practicing breathing exercises. I mean, it could actually be the first time you ever do it that you might feel it straight away, but particularly if kind of regularly incorporate it into your day. It helps with the reduction of our stress hormones, so things like noradrenaline and cortisol. And it helps to stimulate what we call the vagus nerve. So there's this nerve that runs from our brain all the way down to our gut, and it really, by stimulating that, it helps to kind of dampen down your nervous system. So it will just help us come back feeling more focused, give us recharged energy. So I'm going to ask you once again to, become comfortable in your chair, relax in your chair, make sure your feet are flat on the floor once again, and just to take some normal breaths before we start. So I'm going to be asking you to draw long, slow inhales through both your nostrils for as long as is comfortable. And I'm going to ask you to hold your breath once again for as long as is comfortable. So at no point should this become difficult for you or you feel dizzy. So you're really going at your own pace. And then exhale through both nostrils for as long as comfortable. Now, the exhalation, if possible, to make the exhalation the longest, sometimes people like to count. Others just like to kind of feel, let the breathing go and see how long they can kind of inhale and hold and exhale. But if you can try and keep in the back of the mind, try and keep that exhalation the longest, because that's what's really going to stimulate that vagus nerve. So once again, if you're in this comfortable position and you want to close your eyes, if that feels comfortable for you, if you start to draw in your long, slow inhale, so breathing in through both nostrils, and for as long as you can comfortable, remembering that diaphragmatic breathing. Remember that you want it to come from the belly, keeping your shoulders relaxed. And then hold the breath for as long as it's comfortable, relaxing your jaw, your throat, your neck, your shoulders, your diaphragm, your abdominal muscles. The more relaxed you are, the easier it will be for you to hold your breath. And then to exhale through both nostrils. Once again, if you can try and keep that for as long as you can. So then let's repeat that again. Draw a long, slow inhale through both your nostrils. You want to hold your breath for as long as it's comfortable, and then to exhale through both nostrils, once again for as long as you can. If you want to do one more round on your own, long, slow inhale, hold your breath, and then exhale. Hopefully you've gone at your own pace. If you found this helpful, you could look up Rebecca Dennis and Let It Go, where she talks about breathing, and the impact it has on your overall health. So let's just finish off with a bit of a visualization exercise, just to help you kind of gain perspective on some of the challenges you may be facing. So if you can start off with imagining the place that you currently exist in. So this could be, you could be sitting at your desk in the office, you could be at home in your home office, and slowly zoom out of yourself. So you're zooming out of the building you're in, you're out of the place, you're out of the state you're in, the country you're in, or even the continent. And then you zoom out even further, all the way through the ozone layer until you reach the moon, and then you can see the whole Earth. Now think about this kind of problem that you have. How big does it feel now? What does it look like from out of space? So take a moment to just realize how far you've come, and what you've been through and how capable you are. And when you can see how far you have come, it will enable you to embrace this change further and help provide perspective on your ability to cope with the future. And in this way, you're helping to, as we said, build resilience, change your mindset, and become a bit more positive about your current situation. So hopefully this has really put your, helped to put your fears into perspective. We have some fantastic resources here. So we've got some breathing techniques, some further books. There's the Rebecca Dennis that I mentioned. Some of you may be familiar with Dr. Chatterjee. I've been saying too much. I've been talking too much. I can't pronounce words now. It's Chatterjee. He's also got some fantastic podcasts if you'd prefer to listen to that. And obviously some mindfulness apps if you want to give those a try. And lots of more breathwork information. So going back to the breathing, the 4-7-8 breathing is one of my favorites. You're breathing in for 4, you're holding for 7, and you're breathing out for 8. So you could also give that a try. So you'll obviously have these resources shared with you, and you'll also be getting a copy of the slides and a PDF of the slides as well, and a copy of the recording. So thank you for listening to me today. Please do go on and give the feedback link for Laura to kind of guide her on future events. And I'm going to leave it at that. I tend to have a problem now being able to get the video back. So I'm going to leave it like this, if that's okay. And Laura's going to, we're going to discuss some questions.
Thank you, Lucille, for that really interesting webinar. So we have had some questions and thoughts come in. So if we go over to those. The first one I'm going to ask is, do you have any particular tips for neurodivergent people on coping with change, particularly with respect to changing plans or routines?
That's really interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think. So I suppose it's the biggest thing maybe is, and are we talking, it could be personal or work environment, it's sharing the difficulties that you are having. It may be with line management, it may be with your colleagues, or, loved ones if we're talking about a home situation. And so, certain I can't think of the word, certain, things would have to be kind of put in place to try and support you with that. So keeping to your, if we're thinking about a work structure, keeping that it's recognized that, you function better in a more structured environment, and to kind of notify you of any changes. Reasonable adjustments was the word I was looking for. So I think the key here is to really discuss with your with your organization, what is the things that help you work most effectively, and see if they can help adjust that for you and put an environment in place that works for you. But there is definitely reasonable adjustments that they would be needing to do for you. I don't know if that answers your question. If that person wants to maybe give me a specific difficulty that they have, I can maybe answer that. But in a broader term, I would suggest that this is what you would do.
Great. Thank you. So the next question is, what about change that is forced upon us by external forces rather than changes we choose to make ourselves? How do we deal with that? Especially when the change means there is no time for our usual coping mechanisms, such as talking to someone, maintaining health or sleep, etc.
Gosh, that is quite a difficult one. If somehow you don't have the change to use, the opportunity to use your original, your existing coping mechanisms. But I suppose I'm thinking, hopefully there would be something that you could control. It might feel initially like you don't have any control over anything. I suppose I'm going to use a work. I'm trying to think of examples. If I use a work scenario again, so if I'm just trying to think of one way where you wouldn't be able to use your own coping. Maybe it's a change to your work schedule, which means that you're working really, really long hours. And maybe that's what's making it quite difficult for you. I think because if you were able to make kind of changes and think about what are the things that I can control. So let's say you could control your emotions and your attitude towards this enforced change. Or there will be elements that you can think about that you can potentially control. I'm hoping that there would be. And try to focus on those elements that you can control. Once again, it's difficult without a specific example, but I think the key thing here is to really think about, what there must be something that you can control, and you can certainly control how you respond. You can, like I said, you can control your attitude and your emotions, and focus on that to start off with. We all have time to breathe. So, that's certainly something you can control in bringing in a little bit of that breathing and that visualization. You can do that visualization before going to sleep. None of these take a lot of time. They literally take minutes. And once you've kind of calmed your nervous system down and reduced that anxiety and reduced that fear, you might find that actually there's a lot more things that you have that you can control in what initially felt like, an uncontrollable situation. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. And then we've had a comment from one of the attendees who says that time heals and it can take a long time to get used to a new situation.
Absolutely, and I agree with that. And often I think the anticipation of the change is often worse than the actual change itself. So kind of to help you move through that uncomfortable feeling and that challenge, it's really kind of, as we said earlier, just kind of facing it head on.
Brilliant. Well, that's the last of our questions and comments at the moment. So thank you so much, Lucille, for addressing those. As Lucille's mentioned, a recording of this webinar will be sent to all delegates within a day or so, and you can find a PDF of the slides along with some other resources in the resources button within the Workcast system. You'll also find a link to the feedback form here, and for anyone who's yet to complete it, we would be very grateful if you could spare a few moments to let us know how you found this webinar and your thoughts for any future webinars we could hold. Support Network has a range of webinars to support you in your life, and you can find further information on upcoming webinars and recordings of the previous ones on our website. Our next Wellbeing webinars are the importance of sleep on the 29th of March, thriving in a hybrid world on the 12th of April, and 7 nutrition habits of highly effective people on the 10th of May. We also have a range of financial wellbeing webinars which we run throughout the year. If you're interested in any of the webinars to book on or to watch live, you can do all of this on our website, and you will get recordings of them to watch at your leisure. So that's it from me, and thank you again, Lucille, and all our delegates for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you.